Hi, everyone. Welcome to this AI Monetization Podcast by Project Pro. I'm Binny, the co-founder of Project Pro. On this podcast, we speak with industry practitioners to discuss the business outcomes they are seeing with AI. There's probably no one better to discuss this than Kanchana, who we have today. Kanchana works at Google. Her role is basically to consult and work with Fortune 500 leaders to understand business problems and help bring the Google suite of AI tools to solve their business problems. So in her role as solutions leader for Gen AI, that's what she focuses on. She's been at Google for over 8 years. Kanchana also has a very strong interest outside of her work on empowering women and underrepresented groups, where she plays an active role there. And previously, she was a AWS solutions architect at DXC. Kanchana, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Benny. Appreciate the intro. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, Kanchana, to begin with, it'll be great to know about your role at Google. It sounds great. You're kind of advising, working closely with large companies on their business problems, solving it with AI. But if you could help us understand a little more in detail, that'd be great.
Yes. So if you think of Google Cloud products as Lego blocks, most times for customers' business problems, you need the Lego blocks put together to be able to use it in an application. So it's never just one product which is going to solve the business problem. It's probably multiple products which comes to it. And sometimes the problems are a pattern. And we are trying to approach it with a pattern. So what I do is I talk to customers, try to identify the patterns in the problems, and build solutions that could be open sourced. So what customers could do is be able to take that solution and adopt it for their platform. So we bring the product to solution to application is how I think about it. For example, middle of last year, when everyone was hyping up on generative AI, I was working on a natural language to SQL problem. The problem itself is a broad statement. There are patterns of problems. There is one customer wanting to use, BigQuery. There is another customer wanting to use Snowflake. There is another customer wanting to, not care about it just on-prem Oracle environment. But the problem remains the same. And the pattern to approach also remains the same. So we built something called Open Data Q&A. Which is multiple products put together. We did our research in getting the best of Google Cloud, and we published the solution, which is currently in GitHub. So that's how we approach the problems.
Understood. Okay. And when you're kind of helping customers assemble the Google Lego blocks to solve the problem, do you kind of also work on the implementation of it with your own team, or is that up to the customer to implement the actual solution?
So we do provide generic guidance, because what happens is every customer has their own way of solving things, and they have their own regulatory compliance related stuff. They have their own security model. We work with partners in such situations when it's necessary. Our goal and focus is to make sure it provides technical expertise, which is not available in the market. Most times we work with Cloud AI Research, Google DeepMind, in bringing that research forward. And then the next goal for us is to make sure it's easily, testable and being able to showcase value quickly. So I actually rather focus less on the security and other things, more on, state of the art research and how we could get it faster to the customer.
Yeah, understood. Okay. And, I'm curious, what are these calls like, Kanchana? I mean, earlier you were telling me you're almost on like 20, 25 calls a week, right? Are these calls where customers are coming broadly curious, what is AI? What can it do for me? Is it that, or is it like, I want to solve this way, can you help me? What is the spectrum of these use cases?
So honestly speaking, it's across, because I have had customers where we are starting to think about AI and how do I get it going, to mind-blowing way of approaching things where you're like, okay, I have to play catch up sometimes in that regard as well. I have
Mhm.
seen across the spectrum, but most often it's the medium one where I have experimented slightly with, the open source stuff, or I have seen this and I have done a prototype. I don't know how to bring it, particularly with agents. I have seen, because agents has become so much of a buzzword, everyone I know would be
Yeah.
like, oh, I have done this agents, and you dig deep into it, it's probably LLM workflow. So most don't even understand the difference. So you're trying to uncover that. Most of my calls would be first doing a lot of discovery,
Yeah.
what they mean by it.
Mm.
Sometimes they would keep saying agents multiple times, but understanding what is agents for them, what is the agentic workflow for them, where are they at right now, how do they want to implement it, does this product or application really need an agent? So I go to the level where trying to understand the business problem is my first goal, not necessarily the technology.
Yeah.
So it's most often uh, the first two calls, I would say, are at a very discovery level phase. I
Yeah.
do not talk about technology. I do not talk about Google Cloud, nor do I care like how we would solve it. That's not the goal. The first goal is always first trying to understand the problem.
Mhm.
And if this problem is a pattern of a narrative we are seeing across the customers.
Yeah. Makes sense. And on these calls, what do you hear as the top two or three burning problems for these customers that you constantly hear?
The first problem I
Mm.
always hear
Mm.
is I've done prototyping.
Mm.
Like this, it's not in production yet. It's not, but like I have done several experimentations,
Yeah.
and I've got it to a point that it works for this case, but it's not for other cases.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to implement it. That's like the first problem I always hear.
Mm.
And then the second problem, they end up going to, it's also how do I measure? Like, what is the outcome? Because that's the second question. Like, once you demonstrate it to the executives, the second question they ask, or ask is, what is the ROI for this?
ROI.
Right? So how do I, quantify it? Where do I, like, how do I go about it? Is the second thing. And also the third thing, which I often see, is the like somewhat an organizational chaos between, across multiple units doing their own shadow IT, creating their own process, and ultimately creating challenges, particularly when we are working with the enterprise
Yeah.
team, IT team. They want to establish a process and bring governance to it, whereas everyone has their own way of dealing things and they don't know how to uncover some of these things.
Yeah.
um, like last week I was in a meetup, a regular generative AI meetup, and I met with Dr. Stephen Wiltram, who is a renowned mathematician and physicist in the world. And there was a lot of conversation, but some things went over my head. Let's not talk about it. But my one thing which really resonated with me is novelty is not unique. Doing the consistent and boring things is what makes things unique. And that really resonates with me very much, because even if you think about AI implementation, right, any of those, you could see those novel things being created, like any of those, like forget about Google Cloud products or any model in the world, um, doing great things. Like it's easy to achieve because it's the first time you're writing a prompt, you're seeing a video, and it's amazing to do. But how do you fit that into your workflow, which is the consistent, boring thing? That is where the most the challenge is. And I feel customers and enterprises, in fact, even us, we face that very often, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think that it's a pretty profound statement. Novelty is not unique. Consistency is what is unique. Uh, It probably applies not just to AI, probably it's his life philosophy applies to everything,
Yes.
right? It applies
Yes.
to startups, entrepreneurs, careers, life, everything. Yeah, so it's very profound.
Binny, you won't believe most of it. I was probably in the session for 90 minutes, and then we had a 60-minute smaller setting.
Yeah,
I would say maybe 20 minutes is what I got,
yeah,
most likely. But
yeah,
this statement like resonated very well with me.
yeah, very profound. And you just mentioned boring workflows, and whenever a lot of what we hear about AI is a lot of value is going to come out of this boring workflows, and we are all curious about workflow. Can you give us an example of among the most boring workflows you have come across? What would any example? Uh,
Most boring workflow.
like a non-sexy, boring, old industry workflow that you've encountered.
So for me, the whole agents thing is a boring thing.
Mm,
Like, honestly speaking, because I know it is this novelty thing. I know
mm,
everyone wants to talk about it, but
mhm.
let's dig deep into it, right? Like, what is an agent?
Yeah,
An agent is like, I'm not going to define it because there is no particular definition yet. If
yeah,
you look at Andrew Ng's statement, let's not define what is an agent.
yeah,
Let's just work on it and like uncover it as it goes. And his definition, particularly in agentic workflow, is that. So
mm,
I am very much follow that. So I'm
mm,
not trying to define an agent
mhm,
because my definition and your definition are completely going to be different.
mhm.
But let's assume what is an agent. An
Yeah,
agent uh, is able to perform a task
mhm,
based on the tools defined
mhm.
autonomously. Like that could be one, definition. So if I keep that definition and like let's just do a standard business, right? So let's do like a legal contract analysis. Like I haven't worked on this application, it is not Google Cloud, like this is not, but I'm just taking that as an example and I'm going to walk through.
yeah,
So if there is a legal contract and you want to do an analysis using an AI agent application. Assume it has three agents. One is to understand the document and maybe create a summarization. And then the second is to, provide suggestions based on that summarization. And then the third one is probably, like create an email for asking further clarification. So there are three agents, like
mm,
assume this is happening. How would you define it in the backend? So this is the definition. And how would you design it in the backend? You probably have three different agents doing the things. And when I think about this architecture, right? Why do I say it is boring? Or, it's the same thing which we have always done is a long ago, so long ago, I'm sure Binny, you and I probably know this, is we were all in a world of monolithic architectures. Where we were like, what, one application is going to do everything. And that's what we were. And then we went to this path of, doing the rest, so kind of things. And then we went to microservices architecture. And microservices became the big thing. Like everyone wants to do microservices. And what did we do? What are the challenges we encountered with microservices? We wanted to, approach the problem of how do you discover? How do you scale? How do you, cluster? What are the, Kubernetes became the king of the world. They were able to, implement it, containerize it, bring it together. Tell me how different this is from an agentic architecture. It's the same. Like you are decomposing the problem into smaller problems, and then you are creating what we are calling as agent, that is essentially an LLM call with a certain set of tools in getting that. It's the same architecture as what we did before with microservices.
yeah,
And there is still the problem of discoverability. There is still a problem of collaboration. There's still the problem, like all the existing problems we experience with microservices. It's the same problem with agents. There is nothing new about it. You did CI/CD before, and here now you're talking about CI, CD, CT, CM, CO, like all of that, which is continuous monitoring, continuous delivery, all of that. So the generally the technology hasn't changed that much. yes, the inner side of things and how it evolves feels like a magic sometimes to
Yeah.
all of us.
Yeah.
But the architecture is going to remain the same. So a person who's experienced with moving from monolithic to microservices architecture would really understand how this evolves. So in my opinion, yes, technology is evolving fast. Research is going fast, but the enterprise architecture, in my opinion, remains the same.
You know, very nice framework to define the agent: task, tool, and autonomous. That's a pretty cool framework. With all due respect to, not none of us can define what an agent. With all due respect to that, if you know, if you could take each of this, right, Kanchana. So, for example, I have my IDE open, and to take the use case that you said, legal contract review, I want my let me let me not call it agent. I want my AI program to understand that contract, and like you said, I do an LLM call by passing that contract as context to that LLM call. Is this an agent? Is this the agent that understands? No, what from here makes an agent? What three steps make an agent from here?
So in that use case, right?
Yeah.
Assume so the legal contract, you're just passing it to LLM,
Mhm.
and that is not an agent. But some customers do define that as an agent because they're breaking up the tasks. But
Okay.
I would not say that as an agent.
Okay.
Rather, assume for that legal contract, they probably have their own taxonomy,
Mm.
and they are probably having their own API call to, understand the taxonomy to like give more customized results.
Mm.
So assume if that's the situation.
Yeah.
So you're making a tool call.
Mhm.
You're sometimes maybe giving examples with your data.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you see these kind of words, then this is the narrative you want to go with.
Yeah.
Um, so grounding to your data,
Mm.
grounding to your APIs,
Mhm.
the ability to extend to multiple functions or APIs in your organization,
Mhm.
any and all of this becomes agents, in my opinion. And
Understood.
you also have, think of your brain, you also have the memory to think about, where there is a long-term memory where you could say, hey, this is all my organization data, make sure you're grounding your things with this. Then that is also an agent.
Yeah.
Or you could say, hey, Binny is the only one who's talking to this bot, and you should be talking with reference to what Binny is or who Binny is.
Yeah.
That is a session kind of memory in the past. That is short-term memory. And there is something called episodical memory. What it is, say, this contract which comes, which is health related, all health related stuff stored in this episodic. And any financial investment research things stored in this. So the next time somebody else asks the question for the investment research, they don't go to your short-term memory, whereas they would go to the episodic memory. So like any of this becomes agents. That's why I tend to stay away from defining what an agent is.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I mean, the episodic and short-term memory seem to have parallels to local variables and global variables, and things like that.
100%. Benny, there is nothing I feel is new,
Uh-huh.
but the way we are thinking about it has become drastically changed,
Yeah.
honestly, because of the research of how fast LLMs are evolving too.
Yeah. And again, that framework you said is probably the most crystal clear definition of to bucket an agent I've come across. And finally, Kanchana, I mean, autonomous. What is autonomous about this thing? That agent that you just described?
So I actually, whenever we define like types of agents, and
Yeah.
particularly there is a very healthy debate in my team about this as well.
Yeah.
Most people, or if you go online and see as well, they would define single agent and multi-agent, which
Mm.
is essentially one agent doing everything, which
Mm.
is the global agent,
Mm.
because the way you could accomplish multiple tasks is with being able to call multiple tools.
Yeah.
Say, for example, even in the legal case, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I haven't worked on the use case and I started picking examples. But the ability to call multiple tools like narration, summarization, report generation, or email generation could be different tools in one agent,
Got it.
right? In that case, what happens is you're not worried about discoverability. You're not worried about collaboration. It's
Yeah.
more this one agent just doing a reasoning and calling its tools. So
Yeah.
you would, like in a pre LLM world, say if I want to do this architecture, you would say um, the first step, do narration, then do summarization, then do email generation.
Yeah.
We would actually write it in the algorithm.
Yeah.
Versus now in the agentic world,
Mm.
this is automatically taken care of by the definition of what that tool is. That's the way we do it.
Okay.
So that being said, when we think about multi-agents,
Yeah.
it's like a breaking up of the larger tasks so that it's easier to maintain, easier for customizing stuff. All of the microservices, monolithic architecture debate, which we have gone through.
Yeah.
So this is how we define. But what is autonomous, in my opinion,
Mm.
is the ability to do things without asking it to do. Like, just because I am defining, hey, this agent is for narration,
Mm.
and this would take the code, like you're defining everything in a natural language so that it understands and reacts automatically. Let me give you another example so that it is, it's the foundation is well established.
Mhm.
I present this in all my presentations.
Mhm.
So in the LLM world, I'm going to walk you through the journey from 2022, how we evolved. In the LLM world, when we asked a question, say, for example, where is New York City located? This we would never ask, but I'm just giving as an example. Where is New York City located? It already knows where is New York, and it's going to just tell you, hey, blah, blah, the answer for where is New York City. The second phase of it, where we evolve to, is a retrieval augmented generation, where you're grounding with your data. Second phase of it is extending using tools, where we are asking with the maps.
Mhm.
So I might ask a question, hey, where is New York City from this address, say from Google Cambridge office. So when I say this, the Google Cambridge office already is aware of it. The address is already, we know of it. And
Yeah.
then the LLM would use a tool,
Mhm.
which is Maps API, to retrieve the directions to that address. So that was the second involvement.
Mm.
And then what happened to the third was the ability to ground with your data. You would say, hey, find me instructions to New York from my home.
Mm.
The my home is your address and the ability to do it. So we went from LLM to tools to the LLM to tools to RAG.
Yeah.
The next phase of it is what is interesting, autonomous, in my opinion.
Mm.
What it is book me a flight and hotel in New York City
Mm.
by and I want to go with me and my friend
Yeah.
sometime in October. So this is a completely natural language, right? But if you break up on the tools and the things which you need to do, I need to pay like the ability to find the schedule between both of our calendars, and your availability and my availability might not match. So
Yeah.
I need to negotiate between both of this,
Yeah.
find the slot that works for us,
Yeah.
and then I need to do booking, find the booking, find the flights, then booking for flights, booking for hotels, and then I need to do the confirmation.
Yeah.
All of this is a multi-agent platform, but it's run autonomously without being able to do it. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but I want to make sure I walk through the
No.
phases.
Yeah. No. That was a very, very helpful example to get context. Basically, you said just basic prompting is where is New York City. You add to that from my home, then it's a tool call to get your current direction and things like that. And then you're giving it a task to book a ticket, then it has to multiple tool calls, multiple agents bring together. That's a very nice example of this whole tool and task and autonomous characteristics of an agent. So this, I mean, in your role, you see this wide variety of use cases, right? Are there some very powerful use cases for agentic workflows that you think are the most powerful use cases for this in an enterprise that one should look at, low-hanging fruit?
One thing which I've observed is most agent use cases, particularly I started exploring this journey sometime late last year.
Okay.
And most agent use cases were in the customer support, the assistant bot, that kind of where it started. I think it's a natural evolvement as well, because most folks had a virtual assistant or a bot in their app, and they thought that is what an agent is. And there have been, of course, there is multiple the stories which has been released of how they were able to create an agentic workflow. Particularly, like one thing which I saw, I don't think this is a Google Cloud customer, but the Klarna, this company said agent is actually doing the work of 700 employees, averaging, and their customer service is reduced from 11 minutes to 2 minutes. So we saw that kind of stories, and I do continue to see that kind of stories. But I think the true power of agents in general is not these virtual assistant turn bots. It's more of incorporating AI as part of your workflow. So when I see there are more use cases that are coming towards, how do I use it in marketing? How do I use it in, fraud detection? How do you do content generation, but in a agentic workflow where I'm serving multiple customers? How do I, particularly in sales and marketing, that has been the key areas. How do I, in the financial industry as well, I've seen that most often. How do I do algorithmic testing? How do I do investment research? That is a big area which it continues to evolve. But one thing, to be honest, is again, I keep going back to my stuff. It's like, yes, there is a lot of research and a lot of use cases that are continuing to evolve. But is it 100% there yet? Probably not. The achievement of what we have established with conversational agents and the achievement in the search agent or a knowledge worker agent has been good. Because you see it in Google AI overviews, it's a search agent which does things for you. And there is multiple customers. Shopify released a search app. I think Spotify also has a AI-powered search. So most companies are evolving to the search side of things, which is good. But I think that is if I were to put a map, this is how we are going to see it. We're going to see every enterprise going to adopt a conversational bot. And then they're going to say, hey, I'm going to do a search, whether it's internal or external search, that's going to happen. And then I'm going to be able to ask and answer the questions. This is what it's going to evolve. And then the evolvement or the success, you would call it, 5 years from now, in my opinion, at least, it's incorporating the AI as part of your workflow.
Okay. And an example of such a workflow is what you mentioned earlier about something like investment research.
Yeah, it's think about it, right? That should be the easiest one, because pulling multiple documents together, ability to summarize and provide the results, that's the easiest use case. But getting that to the point of accuracy you need, it's a lot challenging. It's not easy. So that's why I'm very cautiously optimistic for the future. But I am also aware and grounded on what it is possible today.
Understood. And in this specific use case of investment research, where the results are still not very accurate, is that because so much of investment research is quantitative, number oriented, and LLMs are a lot better at unstructured, textual? Is that the primary reason, or other reasons to it?
One of them, for
Mhm.
sure, because there is a lot of tabular data and you
Yeah.
need to be able to synthesize it. And we know that math is pretty hicky with LLM.
Yeah.
And I have seen that.
Mhm.
But it is also, most of it is nuanced and trying to understand several different sources of information
Yeah.
for the decision to be made or for a recommendation to be made.
Yeah.
And prioritizing what is important, what it is not important is also contextual in nature
True.
in some regards. So that's why I feel like those are harder to achieve because most of it is tribal knowledge.
Yeah.
It's knowing those indicators to derive the results,
Yeah.
and I feel that's where the challenge has been most often I've seen. The investment research, even though it's a good use case and there is a lot of prototypes, trust me, like you just have to go do investment research agent and you would see a lot of prototypes,
Mhm.
but getting it right
Mhm.
is harder. And of course, I always suggest we need human in the loop because this is not something which you could just make a decision on.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. And so, when you're engaging with these customers, Kanchana, you have heard of their top three problems. You have kind of heard the discovery calls, understood what they're doing right now. You've picked a few business problems. You're beginning to help them solve it. What are the top challenges for these things to go to production and people to see ROI, and where do they get stuck? Um,
Um, so I'll talk through what happened with the Open Data Q&A, which is my natural language to SQL platform, right?
huh?
My first challenge is like debunking some of the expectations
Hmm.
because they see a prototype which
Hmm.
is like wow, it wows them, and then they expect that it would work 100% or
Yeah.
at least 90%.
Hmm.
But if you look at the natural language to SQL problem, the benchmark is currently at 78, like actually 76, I think,
Okay.
76%.
Okay.
So the 100 times you execute the query, only 76 times the result is going to be correct.
I see. Okay.
Making the stakeholders aware that
Hmm.
this is not going to be perfect. It is not going to be like, hey, I can ask any questions against the data and I should be able to, generate is my first challenge
Hmm.
because um, the there is the showcase which has been put out by multiple companies. I would like it is not the realistic version when it comes to actual benchmarks and when it comes to actual productionizing the effort. So debunking the myth is one of the first things which
Yeah.
I have to deal with.
Hmm.
And the second one is also there are a lot of restrictions in organizations, particularly with respect to security, getting the access, making sure it works, all of that. uh, I would love to be able to showcase, hey, just take the plug and pull it and it works. But it doesn't because there is, we don't know, sometimes the, organizations don't even know who owns which data, what data do they need for these questions and understanding them. That has become a bigger thing. And
Okay.
the third thing is actually, this is again, the software engineering problem, which we all have gone through is how do I test this? How do I get the ground truth? What, how am I, what is my test going to look like? How am I going to validate the results? What does success look like? Has been a bigger problem because from any of these platforms, you really need to scope it, right? Like, and we need to understand how am I going to take that testing and
Yeah.
get through to the next phase
Hmm.
has been challenging. Like, I would be honest, there are customers who don't have, they have the database, but they don't have the questions to ask because they have never done this before. What is a good outcome going to look like? They have always tested what is the SQL needs to be generated,
Right.
not what the outcome in a natural language is. You
Hmm.
can't automate it because every time the results come, it's going to be different.
Right.
So you need to really have a procedure to be able to test it. How
Hmm.
do I test it? So for me, that has been the biggest challenge. So I'm not even talking about production yet. Like, this is just testing in your world
Yeah.
with something which is available has been
Yeah.
challenging.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. And in previous tech cycles, right, like cloud and mobile and all that, and you know this better because you've been in the tech industry for a very long time. The stakeholders were typically IT, engineering, and folks like that. In this AI wave, is it very similar, or is there a ton of business stakeholders that were absent in the previous or were there enough business stakeholders even in the previous tech waves?
So for me, I think that is a little bit. So I come from a data background,
Yeah,
and so I've always worked with enterprise IT. But the past 6 years, I moved to the AI world. So
yeah,
when I am talking, mostly it's to the business user. So
yeah,
I'm trying to understand the problem. That's what I've always done
yeah,
in the AI piece. And in the data, you are right on point. We are always talking to the enterprise folks or the data folks,
yeah,
data folks, all of that. But this LLM world in this agentic world, it has been a little bit different. Like we are first uncovering the problem with the business stakeholders, but it's this the thing slowly evolves to the IT because IT is the one who's actually going to be getting that going.
mm,
So yes, the conversation of discovery, yes, starts with the business partner, but slowly when it comes to nitty gritty on how to actually get that going, it's an
yeah,
IT conversation again.
yeah,
And that has been pretty challenging
yeah.
in many regards. So the earlier like 2015, 14 world, when we are trying to define the benefits of using cloud, that was a phase where we were talking to people of like, why cloud? Like
Yeah.
I have gone to different customer conversations trying to emphasize the benefits and advantages and disadvantages of both. It's similar to that. Like here you're having a AI conversation, but you're not saying AI at all. You're more talking about efficiency. Like what are the business benefits you get out of this?
Yeah.
And everyone has experienced it. So this is a little bit different because earlier when I was talking about, fraud detection algorithm using Scikit. No one knows what I'm talking about. Versus now, I'm like, you know what? They have all experienced a LLM. They have all asked questions. So that conversation has become easier. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The whole chat interface to an LLM has made it accessible to a
Yes.
non-tech user. Like a scikit-learn is totally inaccessible to anybody who can't write Python. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's a very nice point. And you know, like you said, it's the conversation starts with the business folks. IT takes over for implementations, and usually, right, for implementation of any of these things, there's probably a spectrum of options. There's probably an emerging low code, no code sector of tools like auto MLs. There's probably auto Gen AI tools coming up. There's probably internal teams who want to develop it. Some of it is probably outsourced. There's probably SaaS tools you can buy to achieve the same thing. How do companies make these decisions on what to use? Do different kinds of companies fall in different buckets? How does that happen?
Binny, doesn't it resonate with us at all? Because we this is not a new conversation. Build versus buy versus,
Yeah, yeah.
where we have gone through.
Mhm.
Um, I think that pattern is continuing to evolve. Like,
Okay.
of course, as you said, right, there is the SaaS of the world, which like we do everything for you. You just build the connector and be able to do it. And then there is PaaS operations where we give you some plumbing, but you have to do the rest. And then there is this IaaS of the world where build everything from scratch for yourself and do it yourself,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. um, I I think it depends on who we are talking to in the customer. Like
Mm.
there are folks from all of these spectrums.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a good evaluation or mapping yet, but to be very honest, I'm not going to see anything new in this. This
Mm.
probably is going to evolve the same pattern as we did with the software development cycle, where it is going to be a war in between all of these three things in the organization, trying to figure out the pattern. I
Yeah.
think the most customers, like this again, it's based on my experience in the prior world. most customers are going to starting to want to see where is my most ROI. But the ROI in agentic world, in my opinion, again, I can't speak for everyone, is still a research project. Because yeah, you keep saying, hey, 700 employees work going from 11 minutes to 2 minutes. That work for certain companies, but to your company, it's still a research project. Like, you can't define what it is going to look like. Particularly the way technology is evolving. I always say this to customers, don't look at the technology stack, because the product is going to evolve, the LLM is going to evolve, the technology is going to evolve. There is nothing which is going to stay stagnant. So the ROI is going to be very, all over the place. So that's why I'm very hesitant to, hey, for you, this is the recommendation. There is no, because the technology is evolving faster. I don't know. I don't have clear definition of it, but I do. You are exactly on point. Enterprise is facing the challenge, and they do continue to evaluate. But I think it's still a research project in most instances, according to my opinion.
That's a very interesting point you made, because traditionally we all think of enterprise software buying as very ROI driven. So in a world, like you said, that the ROI is very fuzzy and evolving, what other nudges or value propositions do you use to nudge enterprises to implement AI? Like, how is it? Do you say you're going to be a pioneer in AI? Like, what else do you tell them?
I don't think we are. So I think, as I said, right, in 2014, 2015, we were talking about why to use cloud. And then we're at a point now, cloud has become the default. We don't go in with that conversation. The same with AI. I remember 2018, I did an AI 101 pitch of why you need to. I don't do that conversation anymore. It's more, this is already here. And as you said, Binny, between the products, how do you evaluate? Where do you, see that going? But most times what I recommend customers is also, these big transformation stories, which we all had, right? Like, it's a multi-year journey. You bring in, you think about it, you have a vision, and then you create a multi-year strategy. Unfortunately, in the LLM world, that's not going to work. You could focus on the what, and what you want to do as a vision statement, but it all comes down to what is your strategy for that quarter, half, and who we are working with. And most customers, they probably are aware, hey, we want to be able to build customer service with 10% efficiency more, or something like that, some broader statement. And then driving them to what is the OKR, and then identifying what are their KPIs and how we can fit into that conversation. So that one by one step, again, it's traditional consulting, traditional approach. It's nothing new. But going from that KPIs to how we help them with respect to model quality, system quality, accuracy, is where that I feel like where we come together, in my opinion.
Makes sense. And we would go on, but just in the interest of time, Kanchana, since customers look up to you to inform them on the latest stuff, how do you stay updated with all this stuff going on?
I read a lot of research papers. That's first thing which I would want to say, because I try to keep up. Sometimes I use Notebook LM a lot. I put all the research papers in a Notebook LM, and sometimes I go and ask the question, and what does it mean? Some customer would mention a novel, word, and you're like, oh, what does it mean? And then you go and research it. It has happened multiple times. And I also, try to keep up with everything which comes out of the world, because it does tend to become more echo chamber because you are in Google and you are listening to these kind of things and you don't know what the industry is evolving to. So I follow a lot of OpenAI folks, a lot of partners in this space who provide incredible content, in my opinion, of what they are releasing, what Microsoft is doing, all of that. That has become quite helpful because you see where the industry is evolving to. And I do subscribe for courses and I make sure I follow along. I recently did, even though I have been researching in the agent space for the past 1 year, I did the Berkeley course for LLM agents. That some of it felt like, I know this, but it's still good to, emphasize, hey, this is what the industry was evolving to. So that has helped me as well. But it is a lot of work to keep ourselves up to date.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a full-time job. I mean, like staying in touch with AI. Yeah.
Yes,
well,
yes.
On that note, Kanchana, thank you so much. This has been very insightful. Really appreciate you taking time to do this.
Thank you, Binny. Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.